Oh, we still got 5 minutes, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thanks. We'll call it in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Chloe, can you take a question right now?
As long as it's not about any of the agenda items, I think so, yes.
I got your email about the training requirement certificate thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I have certificates for some of the modules, but I have not completed the entire thing. Do you just want wait until I do the whole thing, or send them as
Yeah, I was just checking in, so you can wait until you're done. You have until the end of January.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
You lawyers are lucky. Training is horrible.
Jimmy, I hope you're doing okay.
I'm hanging in there. Hope you're doing well too.
Yeah. So we were going to knock out the first item, then I was going to let you make a recommendation on the others as we talked about, okay?
Okay.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Chloe, are we about ready? I think it's right at 5 or 1 minute.
Our IT person isn't here yet, and we need them to connect us to YouTube, so I'm trying to get in touch with them right now.
No problem. You just let me know when.
So everyone waiting, we're waiting for our IT person to help us get set up on YouTube. This meeting will be live streamed to YouTube, so you just give us a minute. We'll be getting started soon.
Chloe, is all the commission members going to be here today?
Not seen
I
Miss.
haven't received.
Good, I'm sorry.
I haven't seen Miss Lymphosis yet.
Okay. We'll assume she's going to join us. She hadn't said she wouldn't be here, I guess.
Okay, IT is on their way.
You just let me know when.
While we're waiting, might remind everybody that our meeting next month is not going to be on the Well, that's right. It's on the normal time. That's right. For some reason, I was thinking the fourth Wednesday, but it's on our regular time, November 18th, which is not the week of Thanksgiving. So you don't have a meeting the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So that's good.
Chris,
And we
you got
do have
everybody
another special meeting on November 2nd.
Yes. And then that was the other thing I was going to say is that we've got a special meeting the afternoon of the 2nd, where we will hear some more from our comp plan consultants and some of their findings.
Thank you, sir. Chris, did you see, on a side note, that thing on Judge Fields? I don't know what part of the street, they did do that street name part for him, somewhere on Spring Street.
It's supposed to be near his office, which was near Cumming Street or something.
Okay, what is just a small section or something?
It's not a renaming of the street. I think it's just an honorary name plaque or something like that.
Similar to the Sokol or Berlin part, that kind of thing?
I think so. Like it might be on a street sign or something. The city didn't do it, so I don't know if it's coming on our city street signs. It may be one of those DOT signs, which is kind of awkward in that section of Spring Street because it's so narrow. Get one of those DOT signs up is going to take up more than the sidewalk width there, I think. So we'll see how they work that one out.
Yeah, that came out of the State House, I believe.
Yeah. But it's a great honor for him, and he's an important part of the history of that corridor.
Yeah, no. Listen, the guy turns 100. As I told you, he thought now he found out he's 101 because he found his birth certificate, so it's pretty amazing. And I was sorry to see that Judge Fielding just passed away, Bernard Fielding.
I see Sunday is here now. Welcome.
Sunday's always got to make an entrance,
It's a good thing I'm staying muted there, Charlie.
So the public can't hear us now, correct?
Yes, they can. And we are now officially live on YouTube. So as soon as Andrew makes me host again, or actually you can go ahead and start the meeting, Charlie, and we're ready to go.
All right, thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone to the City of Charleston Planning Commission meeting of October 21st, 2020. So everyone knows the commissioners are volunteers. They're appointed by our Charleston City Council, and I know everyone joins me in thanking them for their work. I'd like to explain the way we're going to run the meeting today. I'll read an item from the agenda. We don't have a long agenda into the record, and then we'll hear from staff. Staff will present it and give us an opinion on it, and then we'll hear from the applicant. Then we'll hear from anyone in favor of the application, then anyone opposed to the application, and then we'll give the applicant a chance to answer any questions that have come up or anything they want to say, and then we'll close the public aspect of this. And then Mr. Morgan or Ms. Stuber will recognize anyone that wants to be spoken that have signed up to speak, as well as I believe Christopher, I think Ms. Stuber will also read the written comments on each item of the agenda today. And we have a lot of people that want to speak, and we have a lot of written items, and we want to make sure we hear everyone. That's important to us, and we will. So, Mr. Morgan, would you like to introduce anyone, and then I'll read the first item of the agenda, and for the record, introduce anyone on the staff, Christopher Morgan, that's going to participate today?
Well, sure. So I'm Christopher Morgan, Planning Manager at the City of Charleston Department of Planning, Preservation, and Sustainability. Chloe Stuber is making this whole meeting run. She is a planner in our office. Philip Overcash, a senior planner in our office, is also here helping us with tech issues. And Marcia Grant is our clerk, who will be recording things for the minutes. We don't have zoning staff with us tonight because we don't have subdivision requests. So it's just the planners tonight.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. So we're going to go ahead and get started. The first item on the agenda, we'll do the first item, and then I think Mr. Bailey, I was recognized, had a suggestion on items 2 through 5. Oh, just to clarify, Chris, I believe item number 6, 580 Savannah Highway, is deferred, correct?
That is correct. So if anybody's
Great,
here.
thank you. Any other changes? Any other changes to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Number 1, under rezonings is Morrison Drive, Romney Street, and North Romney, Laurel Island Peninsula, TMS number 45902, 00013, 4611, 303, and 464. And there's a number of zeros, and I'm going to miss some, 0000000, 02, 006, 023, and 038, approximately 196.6 acres request that subject be deleted from the Old City District Overlay zoning maps. Mr. Morgan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So for members of the commission, so this is a request to work on the heights in this area and to clear up the precedence of the Old City Height District or the PUD in reference to the heights. And what this action will do is make it clear that the PUD is the determiner of the heights in this location for these properties. Currently, they are in the Old City Height Districts, the ones that were just listed. I'm going to go through a couple of the slides, but you all are familiar with where the Laurel Island PUD is. It's off of Morrison Drive, and there are some properties that are along Morrison Drive as well. And then there's the Laurel Island proper property. This is in our Century 5 plan. It's shown in the Century 5 plan as industrial and urban core. So this is an area where greater heights, greater intensities are recommended. So, you know, all the heights that were in the PUD, as we talked about in previous meetings, are appropriate from our standpoint in looking at it in the context of the comprehensive plan. Just so you see the overall parcels that are involved in the PUD, again, they're outlined in yellow here. And again, the bulk of this is the Laurel Island old landfill, but there are the properties along Morrison Drive and a small property along a railroad right of way. So in the PUD that is making its way through City Council, that will be up at City Council next week for final approval, these are the height districts that have been recommended and again are moving forward. You have the tan color, that's the 2-story entertainment district on the waterfront to the east. Can you all see my cursor? Do you see a cursor moving around? Okay, great.
I do. Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, then there's a kind of tealish color here. That's the 2.5, 3.5 story district. Then there's a purple area that's the 8-story district. And then there's an area that is the 12-story district. Your action tonight is not about those heights. You all have already commented on the heights in reference to your recommendation forward on the PUD. What you're looking at tonight is just to remove these areas from the Old City Height District so there isn't dual regulation of them. It will now be covered with the PUD, assuming that this moves forward. But I just wanted to remind you that there were height districts already set by virtue of the PUD. These are the height districts that exist at present under the Old City District. It's the waterfront district for the Laurel Island proper areas, which allows basically an infinite amount of height, provided you have an equal amount of setback from that height. And then we have heights that are the 412 district here along Morrison Drive. So those would become 8s as per the Laurel Island PUD that I showed you a second ago there. Those are parcels that are in purple. So that is essentially where we are. We do recommend approval of this. It's more almost of an administrative type change, but it does need to come before you all. And of course, it will go to City Council. It's already had first reading at City Council, and we'll get final readings at the meeting next Tuesday.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. You know, I was remiss. Let me just read so everyone knows the commission members that are here today. I should have done that at the beginning, and I apologize. Mr. Jimmy Bailey, Ms. Erica Harrison, Ms. Donna Jacobs, Ms. Angie Johnson, Ms. Sunday Lemphasis, Mr. Harry Lassane, who's the Vice Chairman, and Mr. Sean Flug, and myself, Charlie Carish. Thank you, Christopher. Since the city is the applicant, is anyone that signed up or wants to speak on this item, Christopher? Or Chloe?
On the city end, I don't think we have anything else other than responding to questions, but I do believe the applicant has signed up and is available for questions, and Chloe can tell you if we've got other members who want to speak.
Thank you. Chloe?
Yes, Robert Clement has signed up to speak in favor.
Okay, so
And there
we'll
are
put him on.
two Roberts, and there are two Roberts on the list. I'm just going to promote both Roberts. And hopefully that doesn't cause any technical
Will the
difficulties.
real Robert step up, please?
We are here to answer questions if you need us to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Clement. Chloe, you said,
Yes,
is there
sir.
someone else to speak?
That's it.
That's it? Any public comments?
No.
Okay, great, thank you. Questions of commission members on this application or motions?
Mr. Lassane raised his hand.
Who's that, Mr. Lassane, is that you?
I move for approval.
Great, Mr. Lassane moves for approval. Is there other discussion or a second?
I'll second Mr. Lissane's motion.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. Donna Jacobs seconds the motion. We have a motion and a second. If there's no other comments, I'm going to go ahead and call the roll, and we'll take a vote. Mr. Jimmy Bailey,
Aye, in favor.
Ms. Erica Harrison.
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Donna Jacobs,
Aye in favor.
Ms. Angie Johnson,
Aye, in favor.
Ms. Sunday Lemphasis,
Aye in favor.
Mr. Harry Lassane,
Aye, in favor.
Mr. Sean Plug, Mr. Plug, muted. Mr. Plug, are you there?
I'm not seeing him on the call at the moment.
Okay, he must have had to sign off. Well, we have a motion and a second. Maybe he had to sign off, but we do have a quorum and we do have a majority, and I'm in favor as well, so that would be 7-0 in favor of this application. The next items, Mr. Bailey, did you have a recommendation? We talked about this earlier. Did you have a recommendation on items? I guess it was 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 2, 3, 4, and 5?
I do. I don't know if situations like this have come up in the past, but given the similarity in these requests, not to mention many of the letters that we received in our package address all of them, I think the fairest way to handle it for the applicants and those who are opposed would be to let everyone have their say on each of these before we take any votes, because it seems like there could be a situation where once you decide the first one, they could all go that same way. And I'd like to know if there are any differences.
Right.
I don't know if situations like this have come up before in the past, but I think it would be appropriate to hear from all of the.
Right, and I guess what you'd like to do is take these items, I guess, more together. Is that correct? Or discuss them together?
I don't know if we have, I assume we probably have to vote on them separately, would be my guess.
Yes,
That's
sir.
up for someone at the city,
Yeah.
but I would like to hear about all of them and discuss them all together.
Okay. And I think Mr. Morgan was going to suggest that we take these all, discuss them together. I think since they're different applicants, we probably had to vote on them separately. But Mr. Morgan, didn't you want to recommend that we discuss them all together? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's fine with us. And in fact, you'll see this slide in front of you. We've got them all grouped together so you can see their relationship. And, you know, I think you could even vote on them together, assuming it was a similar motion for all items. If they're different motions for different items, then we probably should take them one by one.
Okay. Yeah, my only concern with that was the separate applicants, but I'm okay. Christopher, you don't want to go ahead. Let me read them into the record, and then I'll turn it over to you. So we got item number 2 is 123 Cannon Street, Cannonboro, Ellerboro Peninsula, TMS 46011040077.08 acres, requesting zoning from diverse residential DR2F to limited business. Item number 3 is 121 Cannon Street, Cannonboro, Elliotboro Peninsula, TMS number 4601-104078.09 acres, request diverse residential DR2F to limited business. Number 4 is 217 Ashley Avenue, also Cannonboro, Elliotboro Peninsula, TMS number 460-1104-080.330 acres, request diverse residential DR2F to limited business. And item number 5 is 125 Cannon Street, Cannonboro, Elliotboro Peninsula, TMS number 460-11-04076.07 acres, request rezoning of diverse residential to limited business. Mr. Morgan?
Okay, so I'll start with a general overview of just the general area that these 4 are in, and you all are fairly familiar with this. I think you all have had before you at a number of different meetings the property there at 217 Ashley, which is a historic home that fronts on Ashley Avenue. So this is a location that I think you're pretty familiar with. It's Cannon Street running east-west. It's now two-way, and Ashley Street Avenue running to the northwest. And then we've got limited business zoning across the street, and limited business across Cannon Street, and limited business across Ashley Avenue, and then DR2F zoning to the rear. And there is one property that is not a part of this application in the middle that is DR2F as well, which is of course a multifamily residential designation. Just to give you an overview of where these are in the plan and everything like that, they're in our urban area of the plan. So the plan doesn't really speak either way in reference to the types of requests you have before you tonight, because obviously the plan talks about how urban areas do have residential and commercial uses in them. I think the issues that are at play tonight are more neighborhood specific and more about neighborhood livability and things like that, but we'll get into those further. From an aerial view, you can see the properties. Again, this is the one at the corner of Ashley, which is the largest of the properties. Then we have a house at 121, 123, and then a commercial structure at 125 at Cannon Street. Another image we have shows the overall zoning in the area, just so you see a broader view of the zoning, and the vast majority of the zoning along Cannon Street is limited business zoning. These were not part of that limited business zoning that predates, my goodness, it's probably been in place since the 60s or the 50s, something like that. And then we've had a few rezonings in the neighborhood that you all might be familiar with, some MU up here at Spring and Ashley, and then we've had a few PUDs in the area. We've also had a few corner stores in the last few years that have come in that have history as commercial uses coming forward for rezonings to commercial designations like CT. This is the short-term rental overlay area, and the dotted line here on this image shows the overall boundaries of the Cannonboro Elliotboro neighborhood, which is the boundaries of this special short-term rental overlay. And this was an overlay that was requested by the Cannonboro Elliotboro neighborhood a few years ago now, 7 or 8 years ago. Some of the folks from the neighborhood can probably correct me on the exact time frame on that, but it's been in place for a while, maybe as many as 10 years. And it was designed to help revitalize the neighborhood, to create other uses for some of the properties that were in tougher shape and needed some revitalization. And I'll let the neighbors speak for their thoughts as to, how the short-term rental overlay is working and the short-term rental situation in the neighborhood at present. The properties here is 123 Cannon, residential structure. Then we have 121 Cannon, again, a residential structure here. And then we have 217 Ashley, the larger of the properties, and it's at the corner of Ashley and Cannon. This is a view onto the Ashley Street side, Ashley Avenue side, excuse me. And then this is the 125 Cannon property that, as you can see, is currently occupied with a commercial establishment. It has a use variance that allows this commercial establishment, despite its residential overall, its underlying residential zoning. So it's fully permitted for the use that's there. It's a salon at present, I believe, and it is a historic kind of commercial building at the corner of Cannon and Islington Court. Here's a street view looking down Cannon Street in the general area of these properties. And our overall recommendation, based on discussions over the past several years with the neighborhood, is that we are recommending for disapproval because of the neighborhood's concerns about the short-term rentals in the area and the fact that these rezonings would allow these properties to have short-term rentals. And I will the applicants and the neighbors give you comments on that, and I think there'll be a number of people, and we are happy to answer other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Chloe, do we have the applicants? I guess we need to let them speak now, one at a time.
Yes, I'm going to, Dwayne Green is speaking on behalf of all the applications. We also have David McSweeney speaking on behalf of 123 Cannon Street. So I'm going to promote them both now to panelists. Oh. Okay. Okay. Dwayne, you should have, if you can please share your video and you can unmute yourself and speak now.
Thank you very much. Let me turn down some of this light. I want to start off by thanking all of you for allowing me to present in front of you. My name is Dwayne Green. I'm an attorney here in Charleston. I have a special appreciation for the hard work that all of you are doing, especially in these difficult times, having served on some committee, some city boards before. So I know of the hard work of staff. I see some familiar faces, some familiar names. I've gotten to see a couple of you. And so I appreciate your consideration. I know this is a difficult application to present, only in that there's some history here, and I hope to go over a bit of it in my presentation. And I do thank Mr. Bailey for very astutely pointing out that these applications all have much in common and benefit certainly from being presented together, not just so far as for the interest of time, but also many of the items and many of the issues are ones that the neighborhood and the city have been dealing with. And I think we all want a collective solution that moves everything forward in a way that allows applications like this to add to the vibrant fabric of this area. So I'll start by just mentioning and going from where Mr. Morgan did, and good to see you, Chris, that the Spring Cannon Corridor Plan was adopted by City Council in 1998 following a workshop for residents, businesses, and others in the area along Spring and Cannon Streets. The first of 6 proposals of the plan is to concentrate commercial uses along Spring and Cannon Streets. My clients, which are 4 of the 5 homeowners that face Cannon Street, have filed their applications to rezone from DR2F to LB because of the unmistakable reality that commercial zoning is not only concentrated and dominates as the plan envisions, but is exclusive on Cannon Street except for the applicant's homes, which are zoned DR2. And indeed, there's no other block of 3, 4, or 5 homes on either Cannon or Spring Street that exclude commercial uses. I'm sure you hear it a lot, but these neighbors want to enjoy the same rights as all of their neighbors on Cannon Street. Now, the applicant homes are 3 Charleston singles and a Charleston double. They all face Cannon Street and are zoned DR2, and they're in brown, I think, on this map. And a sea of commercial LB1 zoning, and that's depicted in the pink, to President Street, where general business dominates. The homes whose zoning is depicted in pink to President Street includes Charleston singles and doubles. I just want to emphasize in terms of Cannon Street that no other blocks or cluster of 2, 3, or 4, or 5 homes from Cannon Street's beginning at Lockwood to their end at King Street, except for a single block of 5 homes on which the applicant's property is located between Arlington Court and Cannon Street's busy intersection with northbound Ashley that are zoned commercial. Thus, the commercial zoning of all the structures on Cannon Street, but for the applicant's homes, demonstrates that the applicant zoning is totally different than the surrounding areas. So they're almost orphaned there, and we all know what the medical district is. And many of you recall, as I do, how Cannon Street and Ashley Avenue have changed, how Cannon and Spring Street have changed even before they were two-way. So I got to serve on some of those committees, and I think what's happening in the neighborhood where you have wonderful cafes and you have general business uses and what's going on with the restaurants, I think it's just a wonderful revitalization that we've seen across the city. And I just remember 20 years ago wondering what the future would look like. And I think, with some concerns that are very aptly noted, I think things are going generally in the right direction because of the efforts of city planning and people like Christopher Morgan, Eddie Bello, Charles Chase, Yvonne Fortenberry. But neither way, in reviewing the surrounding area, and particularly the intersection of Cannon and Ashley, which is a major northbound one-way artery that forms the eastern boundary of these applicant homes, 3 of the 4 structures at the intersection of Cannon and Ashley Avenue are zoned for commercial use. The only Charleston double owned by one of the applicants on the southwest corner facing Cannon Street at 217 Ashley Avenue is not zoned commercial. In terms of 217 Ashley Avenue, and that's the one on the corner, obviously, that you all have been interested about as well. 217 Ashley is not the only structure facing Cannon Street at its intersection with Ashley Avenue that is not zoned commercial, but there are 4 homes immediately south of that major intersection on the east side of Ashley Avenue and across from 217 Ashley Avenue that are zoned commercial, including a Charleston single and a double. So, in further reviewing the surrounding area, a similar, dominant, and nearly exclusive commercial use is evident on Spring Street. Along the entire length of Spring Street, there does not exist an entire block of 3, 4, or 5 homes that are zoned DR2. Now, going into the more specific concerns, I've gone into that background. None of the applicants have expended design, preliminary bells, or improvement costs, and the applicant homes are, denied certain uses. We know that. Co-applicant David Sweeney at 123 Cannon is an engineer who owns McSweeney Engineering. He's denied use of his home as a home office unless the home is his primary home, and it's not. Similarly, McSweeney is precluded from using portions of his home for fellow engineers or from renting portions of his home as offices of any kind. And in speaking with members of the neighborhood, I don't think that anyone has any objections if McSweeney were to do this. I think there's a concern that there would be upzoning and short-term rentals. And of course, that's the specter that hangs over all of this. But McSweeney, as for one, that is not his plan, and that's not part of his application. He'd like to use it as an office. And his co-applicant, Kelly McSweeney, and she's gonna read some letters of support because we know there've been some letters against as well. Kelly McSweeney is a medical doctor. She's denied the use of her home as a home medical office unless the home is her primary home, which it's not. And again, I don't think the neighborhood in its opposition has any objection to her using it as a medical office, but the fear is either she'll sell it or she'll turn around and make it a short-term rental. The McSweeneys are next door neighbors to the east. Their next door neighbors to the east are Bill and Carenza Armendariz at 121 Armendariz. I apologize for not stating that absolutely correctly. At 121 Cannon, they're currently residents of Chicago. They're similarly denied the use of their home as home offices unless it's a primary residence, and it's not, and they're precluded. Representatives of the applicants have attempted to contact longtime 5th homeowner Jerry Kalinsky, and he's at 119 Cannon Street. That's located next to the home at 121, obviously, and the Lowe's at 217 Ashley Avenue. And we were unable to reach Mr. Kalinsky. Jeffrey Kalinsky's next door neighbor on Cannon Street to the east are the Lowe's. And of course, they've been before this board before. You all know that Bob Lowe is a retired Air Force pilot and lawyer. He's a principal of his law firm. Like McSweeney and like engineer McSweeney and Dr. McSweeney, Mr. Lowe is precluded from using portions of his home as a law office or a fellow for fellow lawyers for renting portions. And again, that's what he's asking for. And we don't think that anyone in the neighborhood has any objections to this type of use. The McSweeney's next door neighbors to the west are the applicants, the Wards, and the Wards are co-owners of Clean Slate Enterprises at 125 Cannon Street. They are, as Mr. Morgan said, operating under a variance. The Wards operate Tabula Rasa Salon. A statutory condition of this variance is its continuous use. If that use ceases after a 3-year period, the variance tolls. And like the McSweeney's, Amendares, Lowe's, and Kalinsky's, the Wards are precluded from using their property for the generation of other, as offices to support themselves or for their wedding grooming business. As an attorney, I feel, and this is my opinion, and obviously I've been a writer on a lot of these issues in the neighborhoods as well, and work with Mayor Riley on some of these committees, but I believe, and the applicants obviously do also, that it's reasonable that the Planning Commission allow a fair or enter a recommendation to City Council that the applicant's property be rezoned as requested. And again, I'm very cognizant of the worry. The worry is that the upzoning will become more, and we know there's a history here. And I understand the whole unwritten policy and the slippery slope, but every individual candidate deserves to be looked at on its merits. And I've reached out to the neighborhood leaders, and I know many of them, and I respect all of them that I've spoken to. And I believe that if the applicants use the property as stated in these applications, and the homeowners association sees what happens with these properties, this could be a model going forward of coming together with the neighborhood to create uses that add to the fabric of the neighborhood, add to the business variety, but do not bring a lot of the hazards of short-term rentals. And again, I understand the position of the homeowners association. If you've got to draw a line in the sand, perhaps, or feel like you have to protect the stock of existing short-term rentals for those owners, or to protect the livability of the neighborhood. But the only reason I get involved, and I'm not in front of you all a lot or at all, is if I believe that an application is consistent with not only the plan, but with the neighborhood uses. And as stated in this application, as I believe will be, if this application is granted, that is the way that these properties will be used. And I think that would be a great example for this neighborhood. And that's my belief as to the fairness and to why I believe that you all should recommend to City Council to take a look at this and to allow them the uses that their neighbors enjoy. Short of, and again, they're not using it for short-term rentals. A rezoning of the applicant's property is consistent with the formal recommendations of the Spring Canyon Corridor Plan that was adopted by City Council in 1998. And it's become even more commercialized, as many of you all know. And again, it's the uses that really affect the neighborhood. And again, I've been to many neighborhood meetings, and I think I've spoken several hours to members of the neighborhood association. And I am willing and will remain willing, to work out some sort of solution that moves forward that they could support and be behind, should we be fortunate enough to get your recommendation. The applicant should not be denied uses for their property that their neighbors are. And again, you've heard that, but these specific uses on these applications are not in conflict with the neighborhood's wishes or the plan, and they are not going to add to the short-term rental problem. My clients have attempted to gain neighborhood support. I know that's a question that you all usually ask. They did, on October 5th, 2020, Dr. McSweeney did appear on Zoom before the Cannonboro Elliottboro Neighborhood Association, made a presentation that mirrors my presentation in many ways. 19 families, according to those that attended, 19 families attended the Zoom presentation, and by a vote of 10-1, with 8 families not voting, my client's request was denied. So we have attempted in good faith to work with them, and will continue and hope that we would be allowed that opportunity to do that. I've spent multiple hours, as I said, talking with neighborhood leaders. I've spoken to some of you all who know me about my commitment to not only neighborhoods, but the city plan and what you all do. Again, I appreciate it and would never ask you all to go out on a limb unless I believe that the plan was consistent, not only with the neighborhood in the future, but also the plan that city council enacted. So I will wrap it up by asking you all to hopefully and gratefully and prayerfully approve a recommendation for the 4 of these applications to city council. I commit to work with the neighborhood should we be granted that opportunity to become a model and to show that you don't have to draw an arbitrary line in the sand to stop short-term rentals, but you can believe when your neighbors, not all neighbors, I agree, and I understand there's a lot of history here, but these are 4 applicants that I believe in good faith are trying to use their properties in a way that's allowable by the law, allowable by the city plan, consistent with the neighborhood's wishes, will not violate the livability. And gratefully and prayerfully, I ask for you all support and your vote and motion in favor and hopefully approval of a recommendation to approve these 4 as a block. Thank you. And again, I understand there's differences, but I do agree with the comment stated that likely the 4 of these will be either approved or not approved. And I obviously will accept the will of the commission and appreciate you all's careful consideration. I know you've heard a lot from me, but I thank all of you and look forward to speaking with any of you and answering any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Chloe, do we have either David or Kelly McSweeney with us tonight, this afternoon?
Yes, and he's still with us? Yes. I have the name Kelly McSweeney, and so I've promoted that name to panelists. If David or Kelly, you have the ability to share your video and unmute yourself if you'd like to speak.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hey, we're trying to work out the sharing video. Just a minute.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. We're fine.
There we go. We're David and Kelly McSweeney. My wife, Kelly, will be speaking first.
I wanted to just say that we moved to the neighborhood about 15 years ago, and we're very active in the neighborhood association, and we believe the neighborhood has become a much more vibrant place than it was. We lived there with our family, and the street was very busy, and we were very active, chairing the commission, the traffic and transport, to get the streets turned back to 2-way traffic and to try to quiet the traffic. But we subsequently did move because our children were young and it was still a very busy street. And as mentioned, it is a commercial corridor. The Spring Cannon plan calls for commercial uses concentrated along those 2 streets, with more heavy commercial west of President. And as you can see on the map, we're east of President, but just, and it's a really quite a commercial zone. I did speak with the neighborhood about the possibility of having an office there, and they seemed very supportive of it. They are obviously kind of consumed and worried about the short-term issue, which I understand completely. And I've assured them that's not what we're intending, but we would like to have it limited business so that we could have a business in there. I've spoken with my neighbors. Obviously, all the neighbors on the block are in support of it. And I spoke with my neighbor across the street, Brett Johnson, who supported it. And I think that you probably received letters from a couple other friends and neighbors in the neighborhood who are active in the neighborhood. My point is just that we've been involved in the neighborhood and we believe in the neighborhood, and we're not out of towners. We're not developers. We're want to be good neighbors and good citizens. But we do feel that this little block has, for whatever reason, over the years, I don't think anybody can answer why, been excluded from the business zoning. And the whole rest of the street is zoned that way. And it seems very arbitrary to have our little block kind of singled out when it is very commercial. Anyone in the area would know that it is. Would you like to?
Well, thank you for hearing our request. We appreciate all distinguished members of the Planning Commission and all you've been doing. I do feel that unfortunately, your responsibility is to ensure the fairness and to protect and conserve the value of property, which I do believe is the role of zoning, is not being fairly heard because of the specter, to use the term that Mr. Green had used before. And I feel that there, as my wife Kelly and as Mr. Green has stated, our request for zoning for limited business is consistent with the 1998 Spring Street, Cannon Street corridor plan. It's consistent with the Century 5 plan. It's consistent with the short-term overlay district. Oh, did I mention that I say that terrible word? The neighborhood association voted for the STR overlay group. Did they say it was for everybody except for our block? But now, because of a few bad apples who have not managed the property correctly, we're prohibited and prejudiced against having the highest and best purpose for our property. It's not, frankly, it's not about us. Our property is the person, if you will, the entity in question here. And although I'm very active in the neighborhood association, I do take umbrage to a very small group, and quite frankly, a very powerful little group, having this much power to sway and to condemn our request. And condemnation maybe is a strong word, but that's almost how you feel. And Kelly and I were very involved in the neighborhood association before it had as much power. And we fought tooth and nail to improve the neighborhood by working with Pena and Michael Mathis with the city's transportation department to convert the streets to 2A. Let me remind this commission that at the time there was great hostility and objection and dissent to go 2A on both of those streets. And I don't think there's anybody today who said, well, I think we should convert them back to one way. So I'm just bringing that up because we're consistent with the plans. We are talking about our property, not what our businesses. Yes, I am an engineer, a small businessman who am precluded from having my business in that property. Would I like to have the business in that property? I don't know, that's conjecture. But what is not conjecture is that this area, this gerrymandered zone, DR2F, is not consistent with the city's and the neighborhood's own plans. I feel there's almost like an unofficial and illegal moratorium on what we can do with our property because of short-term rentals. But it was this neighborhood association that worked to establish the overlay district in the first place. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you. If I sound heated about it, it's because it's frustrating, but I hope you can understand my passion for it. Thank you.
Thank you both. Ms. Stuber, let me know, there's no other applicants who want to speak on these? I think we've heard from Mr. Green and the McSweeney's, just so we get the process correct. No other applicants want to speak, is that correct?
That's correct. And I just want to again thank all of you again. I know you're in an extremely tough position. I know that many of you live in this neighborhood as well. And I thank you all for giving us the opportunity to at least present and get your recommendations to City Council. And we hope that you can recommend us moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Green, and thank you, McSweeney's. Chloe, why don't we take any presentations in favor or written comments in favor that we can go ahead through the process?
Hello.
Yes. Hold on, William, if you could hold on. So.
Chloe, are you there?
Oh, was I on mute this whole time? Okay. We have William Armendariz, who's one of the applicants as well, and so he signed up to speak in favor, but is also an applicant.
Okay, great. Let's hear from. I'm scared I'll mispronounce your name, but let's hear from you, sir.
No problem. Armendariz. Armendariz is my last name.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and my first name is Bill. Yeah. So I apologize with, for some reason, I did submit the request to speak on this request. First, I want to say thank you for the Planning Commission to hear our request. I echo, we recently purchased the property that we have back in February of 2019 on Cannon Street at 121. And the picture that was shown earlier in this presentation does not do any justice to the work that we have done to that property since. So it looked pretty rough. Yeah, that's definitely not what it looks like today. If you saw that property today, we've invested a significant amount of money in that house. It's going to be our retirement home. And we have completely restored it back to what it looked like back originally in 1900 when it was built, and following all recommendations by the bar. I mean, what I wanted to do, and it's really kind of redundant as to what everything else has been said, but I do want to make the point clear that, you know, it's pretty obvious that the city of Charleston has established the Cannon Spring Street corridor and zoned it as such. It's a commercial light business area, except for one small section on the south side of Cannon Street between Ashley and Islington Court, which is our area that we're talking about tonight. The egress and regress of traffic into and out of downtown, along with the established number of businesses on Cannon and Spring Streets, reinforces the solid evidence of an established corridor between President and King Streets. You know, we're not asking to change the neighborhood. In fact, like I said, we've invested a significant amount of money into a full restoration of our property, which faces directly onto Cannon Street, following all the bar recommendations and returning it back to its original grandeur, which stood back in 1900, as I mentioned. We are asking for some semblance of zoning order with all our like neighbors. That's all we're asking for. When you view the zoning map and look at the sea of pink light business zoning all around our property at 121 Cannon, we only ask to have equal and equitable light business zoning as all the other neighbors across the street, east and west of us past our block, and even behind our property to the south off of Islington Court. We would like to have the light business zoning, as was mentioned about small business. I'm approaching retirement, and I'm looking at focusing on my part-time business as full-time. And as I mentioned, we're going to be retiring and moving into this property. And we would like to establish a home office with regular hours for people to come in and go. And we need that light business zoning to do so. And that's all I'd like to say. And I appreciate your time.
No, thank you, sir, for your comments. We appreciate your time as well. Chloe, others who want to speak in favor or written comments in favor, please.
Yes, so we actually have all of the applicants here. There was some confusion with the sign up, so I had them listed under in favor, but if they want to speak as applicants, Bob Lowe is also here, and Keith Ward.
Well, you let me know who wants to speak, and we'll hear them now. If they're an applicant, obviously we want to hear from them.
Yeah, we in the interest of time, we can assume they're for, and unless they want to say something that has not yet been said.
Mr. Green, I hear you, Mr. Green, but again, if they're an applicant and they want to speak, I want to hear from them. So Chloe, if they want to speak, we'll hear from them.
Okay, Mr. Lowe. if you'd like to speak, you should be able to unmute yourself. And if you do want to speak, please also share your video.
Okay, if,
I'm not sure if he's still.
maybe he doesn't want to.
Okay. And then Mr. Ward.
Okay,
Mr. Ward, if you'd like to speak.
Hello, I'm here. Can you hear me?
yes, sir, go ahead.
Yes, could you also
Great.
please share your video?
Yeah, and tell us who you are and where you live as well, if you would. Thank you for the record.
So I'm trying to show the video.
On the bottom left-hand side of your screen, next to the microphone, there's a video camera. If you click on that, it should start your.
Okay, I just hit the start. Can you see me?
Yeah, you're great.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
Mr. Ward, if you would, tell us who you are and where you reside, if you would as well, just for the record.
Yep, my name's Keith Ward, and I'm the owner of 125 Cannon Street. I currently live on Folly Beach, actually on the corner of Lempian, which is ironic with Miss Lempesis in attendance. So I actually just wanted to reiterate, we have no intentions of being a short-term rental. We're strictly a hair salon. We've been in business for 9 years now with no intentions of being a short-term rental. We only want to continue being a hair salon, but I understand we're in a variance to be a hair salon and to be a commercial, business. But if for anything forever to happen to us where we would have to shut down, being zoned not commercially, we would not be able to reopen our business. And that's concerning to my wife and I. We don't plan on going anywhere. We want to own that building for as long as we can. We don't have any retirement, and that's kind of our retirement. So we'd like to be able to continue to operate as we have been operating with no risk. And so with the zoning, we feel like if we were to be zoned commercial, which we're already doing, that would alleviate a lot of our concerns. And that's all we're trying to do. We're not, just like everybody else, we're not trying to do short-term rentals. We just want to continue how we are doing things with no risk of losing our business and losing that option. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward, for your comments and being with us. Ms. Stuber, anyone else in favor or any written comments in favor?
Mr. Lowe was able to unmute his microphone and share video so we can hear from him.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. You go ahead.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Great. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for listening to our application, our 4 applications. I don't think I could state any better what our attorney has stated, nor what the McSweeney's, Mac McSweeney and Dr. Kelly McSweeney have stated. I want to just say, however, that we have no intent to do short-term rentals now or in the future. We are the ones at 217 Ashley Avenue, for those that weren't on the last hearing with us. We own that big house that's 215 years old. Like Bill Armendariz, we put a lot of money into our house, and it would be just pretty foolish for us to get in the short-term rental game. I want to assure the commission that we are continue to be excellent stewards of our home, as we have during the last 15 years that we've owned it. We're going to continue to be good neighbors that we have been for the past 15 years. And we have not and will never conduct activities in our home that would be violative of any ordinance, certainly those related to livability. That's never occurred in the past, and it's not going to occur in the future. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe, for your time and for being with us. Chloe, anyone else to speak? I see there's 2 written comments from Mr. Whittle and Kirsty Sutton in favor of these applications. Is that correct? Is anybody else to speak or no?
No, nobody else has signed up to speak in favor. So.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read these
can,
2 comments in. I'll go ahead and read these 2 comments in, if that's okay with
there
you.
Should be. Okay, yes.
Is Frederick Whittle, 871 Robert E. Lee Boulevard. The property owners in this section of Cannon Street, Ashley Avenue are entitled to the same planning courtesy, privileges, and property rights extended to all others around them. Rezoning to LB is proper and fair treatment. It remains the city's plan to concentrate business and commercial activity to this area. Our company owns 12, 14, 16 Cannon Street, as well as 190, 192 St. Philip Street. That's from Frederick Whittle. Then from Kirsty Sutton of 7 Riverdale Drive, I'm writing to express my support for the rezoning of 123 Cannon Street to limited business. As the property owner in the neighborhood, I consider this block to be already commercial in nature. It forms a major gateway to the peninsula, and as such has a lot of traffic and existing commercial activity. I do not think that adding commercial use in this block would be detrimental to the neighborhood. Ms. Stuber, is any other written comments in favor? If not, we'll go to oppose.
No other written comments in favor.
No other written or verbal in favor. So why don't we go ahead and if anyone wants to speak in opposition, why don't you go ahead and key them in?
Okay, before we start going down the list, I need to confirm one of our phone callers. So the person with the phone number with the last 4 digits, 3407, I'm going to allow you to talk. Can you please confirm your name? Again, the person who's calling in with the last 4 digits, 3407, if you could please unmute yourself. You may need to press *6. Please confirm your name.
Chloe, if they're not, let's go to the next person if they're not around.
Give them a couple more seconds. Sometimes it takes a minute. Okay.
Let's go to the next
one.
Okay,
so first on the list is Nancy Summers. Nancy, your microphone has been enabled, so you should be able to unmute yourself and talk.
Yes, Nick, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Hi, my name is Nancy Summer, and I'm sorry I am not on video, but I am traveling out of town presently and did not have access to video. I am the neighbor that resides at 213B Ashley Avenue, so we directly adjoin the property at 217 Ashley Avenue. And we have been dealing with the Lowe's at 217 Ashley Avenue's attempts to alter their zoning for the last several years. My comments most specifically would be to preserving the zoning on Ashley Avenue, though one of our major concerns with changing the zoning at 217 Ashley Avenue was also that the precedent would be set, which I think we are now seeing if entire blocks begin to request variances because of previously established zoning. It does set, in my opinion, a bad precedent for the future of who will be denied. I respectfully heard all of the applicants. Mr. Green is the representative, and I believe the McSweeney's, and Mr. Ward and Mr. Lowe. And we understand by your comments that your intention for your properties is noble or honorable. But what I'm a little bit confused by, if the hair salon has already been able to receive a variance for their business, why can't the other properties remain zoned as they are and go for variances, which likely would not be denied since the intended uses are so mild as far as affecting the neighborhood? Personally, I have absolutely no fears about short-term rentals. That is not why I have spoken for the last several years, and that is not why I am speaking now. My concern is the livability for the residents who have purchased residential properties and want to maintain them as residential properties. Because of the Lowe's property of 217 Ashley, completely abutting the entire rear of my kitchen house, which is in the Ashley horizontal regime at 213B, we would be subject to any noise, traffic, crime situations that whatever business they deemed to put in there. And again, today, Mr. Green has represented that presumably the Lowe's wanted to put offices in there. We've heard that some of the other applicants want offices. The salon is already there. But what we've heard in the past for the possible businesses that would be at 217 Ashley included things like non-management on site, short-term bed and breakfast. We've heard wedding venues. We've heard spas. And that is what develops the fear that Mr. Green continues to speak of. It isn't what the intent of the current owner may be. It's the intent of who the next buyer may also be. And our understanding is always that the Lowe's intended to put the property up for sale as soon as they got the variance change, because last we were informed, they were not continuing or did not want to continue to reside there. We have also seen them make no attempts, though, to sell their home as a residence since the last time that they went for the variance. I apologize for rattling on. My understanding is that nothing really has changed since the last time 217 Ashley in particular went up for zoning and was denied all the way up to the highest levels. And frankly, as neighbors, we are a bit exhausted in having to deal with this every few years with the attempts to rezone. My question to the rest of the neighborhood is, if entire Cannon goes pink, including Mr. Lowe's house on Ashley, then we in the 213 Ashley horizontal regime are the next block. Do we then turn pink? And then is the next block pink? So now we have a pink zone all the way up to B Street. I do believe that will greatly affect both the nature of what the intent was for the neighborhood of a mixed-use neighborhood. It will greatly decrease the residents available to improve the residential feel of the neighborhood. And I respectfully ask the board to deny the zoning in particular on 217 Ashley, but because of the precedent on the other businesses as well.
Thank you, Ms. Summer. Chloe, who is next?
Next is Cashin Drolet.
Good evening. Mr. Chairman, am I speaking to items 2 through 5 or just 2?
Well, Ms. Drolet, we're actually
Charlie, you're on mute.
Yeah, you've cut out.
Charlie, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. We're listening to all. You can comment on all of those items if you want to.
Okay, Doug, my comments are the same for them, and I don't want to be redundant. On behalf of Historic Charleston Foundation, I'd like to affirm the Planning Commission staff's recommendation for disapproval of these rezoning requests from diverse residential 2F to limited business. And these comments would apply to items 2 through 5. Limited business allows for intense commercial uses, including short-term rentals. The Cannonboro-Elliottboro neighborhood has changed significantly over the past couple of years as more and more properties have been converted to commercial uses and short-term accommodations. These Cannon Street and Ashley Avenue properties are all residential in style. Historically, they've had residential uses. We believe it's important to preserve residential uses where they have historically existed to ensure that this neighborhood does not suffer from a monoculture of use and also remains a desirable neighborhood to call home on the peninsula. We believe that rezoning these properties would alter the residential character of this block and respectfully ask the commission to disapprove this request.
Thank you, ma'am. Chloe, who's next?
Next is Anna Catherine Carroll.
Thank you. The Preservation Society of Charleston stands with the Cannonboro-Elliottboro Neighborhood Association and city staff in opposition to the rezoning of these properties from diverse residential to limited business. When the short-term rental overlay was created for this neighborhood, no one imagined the tremendous pressure the short-term rental industry would ultimately place on residential housing stock and affordability. Nonetheless, great care was taken in the crafting of this overlay at the time to ensure that historically residential areas remained predominantly residential, which is also supported by the comprehensive plan's recommendation to maintain established character and a mix of residential and commercial uses. This block of Cannon Street, bound by Islington Court and Ashley Avenue, is an intact historically residential sector of Cannonboro-Elliottboro that, if altered, would directly threaten the balance of uses that is essential to the health and livability of this neighborhood. While we appreciate the applicant's presentation and verbal indication that short-term rental use is not the desired outcome, there is no way to guarantee that these properties would not contribute to the proliferation of short-term rentals in the future. For this reason, the Planning Commission has consistently recommended disapproval to the 217 Ashley Avenue request numerous times since 2017, and it is highly inappropriate that this petition would continuously be brought forward, and this time in a coordinated effort with the neighboring properties. We applaud the neighborhood for their consistency in showing up to hold the line against the over-commercialization of their neighborhood. We hear them that they're exhausted, and we urge you to recommend disapproval to this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carroll. Just for the record, we do have, I think, a letter on record from you on all four of these opposing the rezoning as well, I think, from your organization. Chloe, who's next?
Next is Bob Holt.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Hey, Mr. Holt, how are you?
Good, thank you. I am not sure how to do my video. I don't see the little thing on the left that lets me enable my video. So if y'all will excuse me, I will continue without the video, if that's okay.
Yes,
Yes,
that's
sir, that's
okay.
fine.
The video is just for the applicant, so you'll only have microphone capability.
Ah, okay. Well, that's probably why I can't find how to enable my video. Okay. My name is Robert Holt. I live at number 6 Tully Alley. I have been a resident of the neighborhood starting on Rutledge Avenue in 1985. So this is 35 years that I have been a resident of this neighborhood, and I have seen a lot of changes, many for good and some for not so good. Kelly and David, I was on the Transportation Committee and had many meetings at Kelly and David's house on Cannon Street. I don't think our neighborhood is all powerful or that there's a cabal in our neighborhood. I think that one of the things that our neighborhood is concerned, and I think that tends to bring a lot of folks out. I want to just clear up a few things that Dwayne said that are not correct. And I had actually pointed it out at our neighborhood meeting when Kelly had talked about it. These are not the only residential properties on Cannon Street. In fact, between St. Philip and Cumming Street, there are a cluster of 33 homes that are residential. There are 38 residentially zoned properties on Cannon Street. There are approximately another 22 on Spring Street for a total of 60 residentially zoned properties on Spring and Cannon. Additionally, in our neighborhood, there are 96 properties that are zoned residential that abut. That means they touch onto a commercially zoned piece of property. The vote was not 10-1, and our neighborhood president, I think, is signed up to speak here. The vote was actually 42-1, with Kelly being the only one in favor of it, and 42 of her neighbors, many of whom know Kelly and David well on a friendly basis. and voted against it because it is not right for our neighborhood. You heard that this is consistent with the 98 plan, and it is not. The 98 plan talks about both residential and commercial uses in this corridor. And if you eliminate all of the residential uses, what they are saying the plan says is all commercial use for this corridor, and that is not the case. I was on I chaired the committee that spearheaded the short-term rental ordinance being applied to our neighborhood. And it was a 2-year process in the neighborhood with a great deal of deliberation, a great deal of discussion, both with the city, with the historical societies, with the Preservation Society, with our own neighbors as to what made sense in the neighborhood. We did want to stimulate economic activity in the currently zoned commercial properties, not to have everyone in the neighborhood attempt to rezone their property into commercial from a residential use for the property. We have a delicate balance in our neighborhood. That balance is not preserved by taking complete blocks and rezoning them commercial simply because the neighbors want an additional use to the property. The properties that are seeking rezoning, with the exception of Mr. Lowe's property, don't have sufficient parking to be offices. They would be coming before you for a variance to put an office in the entire property. They do have sufficient parking. Some of them have sufficient parking to have a tiny office in part of the property, but none of them have sufficient parking to be an office. So I think it's a principle that you should not zone something to something that it does not meet, something that would require a variance to have it used in the way that it has been upzoned. With regard to Mr. Amadeus, and I hope I'm saying that correctly, he purchased his property a year ago. He bought a residentially zoned property. If he had sought to purchase a property where he could put any office that he wanted, because he said a home office, and he can put a home office in the property as it is, he has to live there. But if he wanted to have just an office property, there are a lot of commercial properties in Elliott Borough, Cannon that he could have purchased. In fact, there was an assertion made that people are interested in protecting their short-term rentals that they have, and I don't know that there's anyone. That wasn't an argument made at the neighborhood association. The fact is that there are many properties zoned commercially on the Spring Cannon corridor that are not short-term rental, that are residential and could become short-term rental if someone purchased them and decided that that was a better use for them. So there's no lack of inventory that is available if someone seeks to have a commercial use in Elliott Borough, Cannon. They should have bought the property with the zoning classification that suited their uses, rather than coming and upsetting what is a very, very delicate balance. With regard to Mr. Lowe, he has come to the neighborhood on many, many occasions. And his property, he has said that he is trying to sell his property and going to sell his property, and he's actually listed his property before. His property, the size of his property, could have it subdivided into 7 units that could all be short-term rental. His house chopped up, which is not consistent with what as a neighborhood we want. Now, he could do that today and have 7 apartments there. He needs this upzoning to have 7 short-term rental units there. The neighborhood did not believe, because of a very long history with Mr. Lowe, the neighborhood as a whole did not believe what he was saying, did not believe that his use was to have his law office be at that building. I don't know whether that's his real intent or not his intent, but the neighborhood didn't believe it. This Mr. Lowe's property, as all the properties here seeking the upzoning, are far more valuable with a limited business zoning designation, as is Mr. Lowe's. STR does not have a specific parking requirement. So the only thing that the properties, other than Mr. Lowe's, the other three properties, the only use that they could have, other than Tabula Rosa, who has who already has permission to have their business there, the only other use of these properties would be STR, which that ordinance says the parking that you have is sufficient. So that could be 0 spaces, that could be 1 space, that could be 2 spaces, and you're good with regard to the STR. Our neighborhood has consistently opposed the upzoning in the residentially zoned properties strictly because we want a neighborhood. There is no other motivation on our part. Kelly and David did do a lot of work to better our neighborhood when they lived here. They moved away. I don't know if they intend on selling their property or not. I don't believe David is going to move his office, and David didn't say to you he was going to move his office. He said that that would be an option. I don't believe Kelly has any intention of opening an office there. They are good people. Should you upzone properties that belong to good people just because they're good people? I don't think so. And that is why there is opposition in the neighborhood to Kelly and David's application. That is why there's opposition to all of these upzonings. We don't wish to upset the delicate balance that was well considered when we asked the city to put an STR overlay and draft the STR ordinance for this, and it was well considered. So I ask on behalf of the neighborhood that you guys hold the line on this, because if not, you will have 150 people coming before you saying that they live next to a commercially zoned property and that they want to put an office in their place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holt. Ms. Stuber, who's next?
Next, we have Merrill Benfield.
Okay.
Meryl, your microphone has been enabled, so you should be able to unmute yourself. You may need to press *6. And Meryl Benfield, your microphone has been enabled. You may need to press *6 in order to unmute.
Mr. Benfield, you with us? Chloe, who's next? We'll come back if we need to. I just hate to.
Okay, next is Chuck Waring. Your microphone has been enabled.
Mr. Waring, go ahead, please. I think you're muted, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. That's fine. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Hello, I'm Chuck Waring. My wife and I purchased a property at 203 and 205 St. Philip Street about 4 years ago. We are an example of what Mr. Holt had described. We're real estate investors, and we wanted to invest in Cannon Borough, Elliott Borough. We have a lot of college rentals, and we thought we would diversify and do a short-term rental. So we did our research, and we realized with the short-term rental ordinance, that we were going to be required to have a commercial property. So we bought with that in mind. We didn't want to go in and purchase and then try to upzone. So we purchased it and used it as a commercial property, which was what it was zoned to be in the first place. And as Mr. Green indicated, he said he articulated it's a slippery slope, and it is a slippery slope. What we have witnessed in the past 4 years since we have owned, and by the way, we have put a significant amount of money into this investment ×3. We have a house up front that was 1850, a house in behind it is 1870. We have a double lot, and we have plenty of off-street parking, maneuverable parking. So we did our research on it. The property, when we purchased it, was a college rental. They had, as we understand, 200 people keg parties there. The neighbors, since we have rehabbed it, have been very enthusiastic of what we've done. We're surrounded by short-term rentals. But I think it is a slippery slope. And what we've seen over the past 4 years is we see investors coming in, buying houses zoned residential with the intent to get them upzoned. And that's just not right for the neighborhood. So I concur with what many of the previous speakers have said that are in opposition. I don't think that the applicants here probably intend to use it as short-term rental. I'll take them at their word. But once it's upzoned, if they sell, they have no control of that. And then as Ms. Sumner said, you know, you just get that scope creep, and it starts the domino effect. What properties are next? What properties are next? So I'm just one of those examples that came in and tried to do it the right way. And I would just respectfully ask the board to deny the request on those properties.
Thank you, Mr. Waring, for your thoughts. Chloe, who's next?
Next is Marion Hawkins.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Mr. Chairman and commission members, my name is Marion Hawkins. I'm president of the Cannon-Borough-Elliotboro Neighborhood Association. I reside at 86 Cannon Street. My residents have very well articulated, I think, a lot of the concerns and the position of the neighborhood. I want to clarify a few things. The owner of 123 Cannon did speak at our neighborhood meeting earlier this month. Her request was voted down 42-1. Her request, and she spoke on behalf of the whole of all these properties. Regarding, she did mention the office, and like I think one thing we've said that there was a vote, and that was 15-1 in favor if that she wanted to do a use variance. So if the true need is desiring to do an office, that would, I think that and some of these other properties could looked at on a one-on-one basis, and I don't see any that could be amenable. But I think obviously we've had many requests from 217 Ashley for different requests for different uses for the property, which all seems to be to upzone the property. But again, overall, our neighborhood is a delicate, tenuous balance of commercial and residential properties. The zoning's been in place for many, many years, and these properties are, if you look at them, if you look at the map, the larger map is really part of a large residential block that extends from Cannon down Ashley to B. So I don't think it was an oversight by zoning when it was established many, many years ago. And I think it's consistent with the neighborhood character. Our neighborhood association has consistently opposed upzones, really in order to keep our neighborhood diverse, as well as to preserve housing stock for our residents. you know, the biggest thing we're trying to do is have permanent residents, long-term renters, in addition to retail, service, businesses, and restaurants, so that we can continue to have a vibrant, thriving neighborhood. And the thing is, with these properties being requested to be upzoned, once they're upzoned, it transfers with the property, and it seems like most people will opt for the highest commercial use, which will be STR. And our concern is that we don't want the whole neighborhood to be entirely STR. And then once the precedent is set, and I think this would set a dangerous precedent, and we've seen this request over and over for the last several years. You've seen me, I've spoken in front of BZA as well as Planning Commission and City Council numerous times on these consistent requests to be upzoned. And so we, you know, to summarize, we really feel like, you know, this upzone request, others are not for any hardship, but they're only really for financial gain. And I want to take a little snippet from the city STR ordinance, and the preamble to the ordinance conveys this. It says, City Council is mindful of the importance of maintaining the residential character of city neighborhoods. Absent appropriate controls on the number and manner and places of operation of short-term rentals, neighborhoods stand to be harmed by undue commercialization and disruption to the primary and overarching purpose of a neighborhood being first and foremost a residential community where people actually live, not a place of transient occupancy. So again, to the board, to the commission members, please help us to keep this keep this balance. I understand the concerns. I understand what's been conveyed by the applicants, but on behalf of the neighborhood, I ask you to help preserve the balance of commercial, residential, and for the commission to please deny the request. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins, for your comments as well as your service to your neighborhood association. Chloe, who's next?
I'm going to try again with Merrill Benfield.
Okay.
Merrill Benfield, you've been given permission to use your microphone. If you would like to still speak tonight, now is the time. And again, you may need to press *6 on your phone to unmute yourself.
Mr. Benfield, if you're there, please speak now. Okay, Chloe, who's next? Anyone else?
I have one more person that signed up, but their name's not appearing on the list. I'm going to try the phone caller who was not identified earlier and try and identify them now.
Okay.
Okay. If you are calling in and the last 4 digits of your phone number is 3407, please identify yourself. Please unmute and identify yourself.
Chloe, what's that number again? That might have been me calling when my Zoom wasn't working at first. So I just want to make sure I didn't get on my other phone.
The last 4 digits are 3407.
That's not me. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Go on one.
Well, we're not getting a response, so.
Okay. Anyone else signed up to speak in opposition, Chloe?
No.
Okay. So why don't you go ahead and read, I know some of the people that have written comments have spoken, so obviously I think their thoughts are there, so we don't need to read those written comments because they've spoken to us and we've heard them. Can you read the others now?
Yes. Okay. So the first comment is from Paula Garrett at 2035 Bay Hill Drive. No need to add more STR eligible properties. If everything is STR, then there's nowhere for students or citizens. Keep a balance in the neighborhood. Second comment is from Amanda Kepley at 213 Ashley Avenue C. I do not support the request of these properties to be zoned to limited business. I live on the same block as all of them. The rezoning of these properties would directly impact my day-to-day life. We moved here almost a year and a half ago because we fell in love with Charleston. We had a somewhat difficult time finding a property due to the limited offering of long-term rentals, single-family homes in the area. But we're so lucky when we stumbled upon our little house tucked back behind 213 Ashley. While we love our little house and our handful of neighbors that are not weekend visitors, I would be very disappointed at the addition of unnecessary potential for more short-term neighbors. I would love to have these properties be enjoyed by long-term renters' families. From Vernon Harvey at 12 B Street, F and G. I'm a homeowner at 12 B Street and I am opposed to change these residents into businesses. Our neighborhood has evolved to become a nice residential area and I chose to purchase my home for this reason. Changing the designation of these properties would significantly diminish the quality of the neighborhood livability. From Courtney Wegner at 257 Rutledge Avenue. My name is Courtney Wegner and I live with my daughter on Rutledge Avenue in the Canterbury-Albert neighborhood. I strongly oppose the upzoning of these DR2F properties into LB zoning. Our neighborhood is fighting diligently to maintain a balance of residential and commercial properties. Seems like every neighborhood meeting for the last few years has involved someone with DR2F residential zoning trying to upzone to LB or CT. Basically, all of our non-resident landlords want to kick their tenants out and have STRs. I get it that it's more money for them and they don't care about the neighborhood because they don't live here. No one would call King Street a neighborhood because it isn't, even though a few people live above the stores. We want a neighborhood, which means having neighbors, diverse neighbors of every age and ethnicity. This neighborhood is my home and my daughter's home. We have neighbors we love, many of whom rent their homes. If these continuous assaults of upzoning go unchecked, they will be gone and we will be an island surrounded by STRs. As an African-American woman with an African-American daughter, I have found a diverse community here that is both vibrant and inclusive. I love that we have restaurants and shops in Spring and Cannon and sprinkled throughout the neighborhood. I even support STRs in those properties that are already zoned commercial. Please protect our delicate balance and stop this onslaught by people who care more about the almighty dollar than they do about what they leave behind for others. From Barclay Murphy at 12 AB Street. I'm an owner and board member of 12 B Street, 202 Ashley Avenue. The thought of having our block overrun with STR is outrageous. We have worked diligently to bring our National Trust property back to life. We are vehemently opposed to Cannon Ashley properties represented by Mr. McSweeney being anything other than the homes they were built to be. Please say no to a change of use for these properties. Cater Sparks at 118 Spring Street. Canterbury-Alley Borough has consistently opposed upzones in order to keep our neighborhood diverse as well as preserve housing stock for residents. Permanent residents, long-term renters, retail service businesses, restaurants, etc. are needed to ensure a vibrant and thriving neighborhood. We do not want the entire neighborhood to be all STRs. These properties request is granted a dangerous precedent would be established and will result in other properties will seek the same. From Edward White, 8B Street. As a property owner at 8B Street in Charleston, I'm writing to state my opposition to the upzoning being considered for the properties along Cannon at Ashley. It would be most inappropriate to do so as it would affect the housing of properties such as mine most detrimentally. I would appreciate your declining again this request. Kimberly Howard, president at Gathering at Morris Square, HOA, address 42 DeReef Court. Please be advised that there is strong opposition to the following request to upzone along Cannon Street and list the rezonings number 2 through 5. The owner of 123 Cannon Street spoke to the Canterbury-Albert October meeting on behalf of the entire group. We voted 42-1 against the upzone request for the properties. 217 Ashley requested an upzone 2 years ago from BZA Planning Commission, City Council in the neighborhood and was denied by all. Both 123 Cannon and 217 Ashley have previously been denied. Please uphold the prior decisions not to grant these requests as it would notably change the fabric of the neighborhood. This neighborhood currently has a balance of commercial and residential properties. These properties seeking upzones are part of a large residential block that extends from Cannon to B Street along Ashley Avenue. Canterbury-Alley Borough has consistently opposed upzones in order to keep our neighborhood diverse as well as preserve housing stock for residents. Permanent residents, long-term renters, retail, service businesses, restaurants, etc. needed to ensure a vibrant and thriving neighborhood. We do not want the entire neighborhood to be entirely STRs. If these requests are granted, a dangerous precedent would be established and will result in other properties seeking the same. This will be an incredible loss of residential homes and rentals in the area. These upzone requests appear not for hardship, but only for financial gain, and I am strongly opposed. George Holt and Jerry Morin, 6 and 8 Charles Street. The purpose of this email is to state my opposition to the zoning change request, list rezonings number 2 through 5. neighborhood is gradually being transformed by generally non-resident investors capitalizing on the increased values of properties zoned for whole house vacation rentals, which are only possible with the zoning changes these applicants would like you to approve. There is no hardship I know of to justify these changes there. Therefore, I'd like to ask that the board reject these applications, and I appreciate the board's consideration and attaching value to the opinions of neighborhood residents in your deliberations. Joe Cannon, 209 Ashley Avenue. I'm Joe Cannon and I live at 209 Ashley. I'm opposed to the change of zoning for the properties at 123 list alt 235 rezonings. I have lived in this neighborhood since 1982. I taught at the neighborhood school, Rivers Middle School. I have during that time owned 3 properties in this neighborhood. My area between B and Cannon live a variety of people, students, business owners, older people, and people who have lived here for many years. We are bounded by MUSC on the lower side of the street. If the houses on the upper end of the block go commercial, even just an STR, it will propel the rest of us homeowners into an area that have decided can go rapidly commercial. What will be the fate of the rest of us? STRs in this neighborhood have had raging parties and have even had gunshots fired. This is a neighborhood. We bought into a neighborhood. We have lived here all these years to be told that we will go commercial. Do you have the right to change our living status? I hope you will ask yourselves that, because your decision will not only affect the properties in question, but the rest of us as well. This is the question that should have been asked and solved before the owners purchased the properties in question. People who buy properties hoping to change their status are speculating. In this case, they're speculating on the backs of the longtime homeowners. For you to allow this would be a travesty to the rest of us who have ownership in this block, this area, and this neighborhood. Please deny this request for the sake of the rest of us who live here. James Lee Trent, 517 Royal Avenue, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, the owner of 70, 70.5, and 72 Cannon Street, and I'm writing to urge you to deny the upzone request for today's Planning Commission meeting for the zonings 2 through 5. Lived in and owned multiple businesses in the neighborhood for years. I urge you to deny the upzone request for the above properties for several reasons. First, there's no good argument for the upzone other than financial gain. Second, the neighborhood has a lively balance of residential and commercial zoning. Approving these requests will set a bad precedent for future applications and risk the neighborhood's character in the long run. Third, the neighborhood association, the BZA, and Planning Commission has already denied 123 Cannon's upzone request 2 years ago. Mary Mac Wilson at 142.
Wait. You go ahead.
Mary Mac Wilson, 142 Spring Street, noting her opposition to zonings 2 through 5, as well as general opposition to upzoning properties for use as short-term rentals. When we moved into our home at 142 Spring Street 8 years ago, we had a diverse mix of neighbors, owners, tenants, students, children, elderly, businesses on our block alone. Now we are surrounded on 3 sides with short-term rentals and one of only 2 homes on our block that are not short-term rentals. We miss our neighbors, we miss the relationships we had with them, and we miss not having to call the police every weekend to quiet the bachelorette parties. We love our neighborhood and fear that the character is being permanently changed. At a minimum, I urge you to maintain the zoning that is in place and not establish a precedent for upzoning in a market that already has a housing deficit. Meryl Benfield, we weren't able to hear from Meryl, so Meryl submitted a comment as well. 213 Ashley Avenue, opposed to rezoning of the historic locations for rezoning into commercial. After moving to Charleston in 1982, I found a number of post-Hugo homes waiting for restoration. Careful guidance from historic groups, I was guided to the wonderful but not restored 213 Ashley Avenue. The area was up and coming, but offered original residents, college and medical students, churches, schools, and long-term residents. Now we are faced with the fight to save one of the most diverse areas of Charleston. We are going to fight to keep an entire historic block of wonderful architecture into commercial use. This is not why we live here. The many new residents and owners are in unison to not make this a marketing and event space in our area. My residence for 27 years has been wonderful with changes being made, but not entire sections of the city made commercial. This is when lawyers, planners, and money merge to create developments, not residences. My 78 reasons I have against 217 Ashley Avenue is the desire to make it a commercial space for basically anything the owners wish for. My home is 78 feet of frontage space with 9 feet of distance from my house to their driveway. I have 7 windows that look over to the lovely maintained gardens of 217 Ashley Avenue. They're great neighbors, and I understand that people's lives change, that owners wish to move, but I will not stand for noise, parties, band, weddings. This zone change releases this magnificent area into whatever someone cares for. The decades of protection of neighborhoods will be gone with the wind, and no one can reverse history. I am opposed to the zoning change. Chantel Dorsey at 149 Line Street. I'm an African-American woman living and owning my home on Line Street in the neighborhood. I live near 2 commercial properties, dog wash and a vet. I enjoy and have enjoyed the diverse character of the neighborhood, not only from the diversity of residents, but also from the diversity of uses, including both residential and commercial. I'm concerned about the proposed upzoning for the 5 properties on Cannon Street that are coming before you today. We have a delicate balance of commercial and residential uses and believe we are at a tipping point. Because we have so many commercial properties in the neighborhood, large percentage of residential properties are near, across from, or abut commercial properties. That seems to be the only rationale for these applicants. If you let that stand, half our neighborhood would immediately seek upzoning and all the currently occupied tenant properties would become STRs. I want to live in a neighborhood with neighbors. I also want proximity to commercial activities. That's why I love this neighborhood. But without neighbors, it will just be an extension of King Street. We have a lot of tenant-owned properties here, and they will go to STR in a heartbeat if you let them. That will leave us homeowners with no neighbors and then moving out ourselves and coming to you to request upzoning and then selling our property to an STR investor. These 5 applicants don't live in the neighborhood or are trying to sell their property right now and get out, not caring about the mess they make for the remaining neighbors. They don't care how this neighborhood looks in 5 or 10 years. I do, and so do the 42 neighbors of mine who attended and voted against this proposed upzoning at our last meeting. The only person voting in favor was the one applicant who attended the meeting. I'm not being dramatic when I ask you to hold the line against this upzoning and let our delicate balance continue to create a vibrant and wonderful life for me and my neighbors. As an African-American woman, I know that African-Americans are usually the first to go when this kind of things happens, and I ask that you stand as guardians of balance and livability for this neighborhood. Tara Lowry and Rick McKee at 6 B Street. I'm emailing you concerning rezonings 2 through 5. Opposed, as the neighborhood is supposed to be a mix of residential. Over the past years that STRs have been allowed, the neighborhood has changed for the worse. At all hours of the night, loud drunk persons are yelling down the street, often waking us up. We have had a mix of individuals walking down our 70-foot driveway into my gated courtyard despite no trespassing signs. Many items have been stolen. My husband lies or threatened when he was confronted one of these people at 1 a.m. By allowing the zoning, these STRs are often unmanaged and out of control. I also am often walking past yards full of beer cans and glass in the street. Additionally, there are small children on the street who should be able to sleep and be free of intrusive behavior from strangers. Additionally, there is not enough residential parking. I have made multiple complaints. I urge you to defer to the neighborhood vote and the will of the residents who actually live here. 2 more. Tony and Tracy Bennett, 47 Bogart Street. Please take the following as a vote against any upzoning for these properties along Cannon Street and Ashley Avenue. It lists all rezonings 2 through 5. We have William Turner, 247 Rutledge Avenue. Resident and property owner within the neighborhood residing at 247 Rutledge Avenue. I'd like to go on record opposing the requested zoning, list of rezoning 2 through 5. Neighborhood currently disproportionately burdened with short-term rentals. Nowhere else in the city does there exist such a high concentration of STRs, and we don't need any more. I offer a unique perspective on STRs, having resided at 82 Spring Street up until last year. This was a home I had planned to be in for a very long time. In the span of 2 years, I went from having no STRs on my block to being the, sorry, hearing feedback. No STRs on my block to my being the last resident. I feel that I was forced out of the area due to constant noise from weekly bachelor parties, wedding receptions, spring break parties, and a host of other intrusive activities, including my driveway being used as a public toilet, my front porch being used for unwanted bridal, wedding, photo ops. The residents living in the surrounding homes of these properties deserve a life of peace and quiet. If these properties are rezoned, I guarantee you all their lives will become miserable just as mine. Please put the lives of the people in the neighborhood above the applicant's desire to make money. After all, these properties were zoned for residential use when purchased by the applicant, knowing fully well that the allowed uses for the properties were. Once again, I respectfully ask that you deny these requests. And actually, Patrick Purnell, who had signed up to speak, did submit comments. So since he wasn't able to speak, the final comment is from Patrick Purnell at 213D Ashley Avenue. He's the owner of 213D Ashley Avenue and has enjoyed the quiet serenity of the neighborhood for over 24 years. His house abuts 3 of the properties requesting rezoning. This rezoning, which appears to be strictly profit motivated, would not only affect me personally, but all of my neighbors who enjoy a residential environment. It will diminish the value of my properties and alter the quality of life. We have to hold the line against further commercial expansion in our district and not let the edge be eroded. Once the edge falls, the center will fall as well. The intersection of Ashley Avenue and Cannon Street is residential and church and has been for 200 years. It is a wonderful asset to the city at large and should be appreciated, not destroyed. We have already lost too much. Let's protect what we have left. It is my hope you will vote against this upzoning request.
So Chloe, Chloe, you did a wonderful job. You get an A+, by the way. But you're out of breath, I know. Is that everyone that wanted to speak in opposition or submitted written requests in opposition?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. So now we would ask Mr. Green if he'd like to respond to any comments or give us any other information for the applicants or any of the other applicants. Mr. Green?
I would very much, Mr. Chairman. And again, let me thank all of you for your service on the board and for giving us consideration of this. I've sat in that seat before, and because of that, I know how hard this decision is. And I know how hard it is to break from precedent. I kept hearing the word precedent. And let me tell you, this isn't the first time I've been on the side of a discussion or a community discussion on Cannon Street, on which I was in the minority. And I say that I heard this a couple of times as an African-American male. Once upon a time was the chair of the Cannon Street Y. And we wanted to sell the Y so that the Y could have a future. And we saw the change of the neighborhood. And at that point, several residents in neighborhoods took to the paper. It was on the front page of the paper about how they didn't want to see the neighborhood change. They didn't want to see the gas station that was at the corner of Cannon and Spring Street change Cannon and Cumming Street change because it was a nice, quaint neighborhood. And now those condos that Comer made and Cannon Street's been sold and everything else has changed. And we said, look, if we if we sell the Cannon Street YMCA, this neighborhood will evolve into the vibrant neighborhood it is now. I'll say something I don't ever say at a zoning meeting. I agree with every one of those letters in opposition. Every one of those letters in opposition that talked about the dangers of short-term rentals. That's why when I was on the BAR and when I was appointed by Mayor Riley as an attorney, looking at these same issues for the King Street corridor, we wanted to make sure we had the plan. But let me tell you, not one of these applicants has asked for a short-term rental. And what you've heard are the things that we all hate about short-term rentals: gunshots, crime, yards being used as public toilets, lives threatened, parties, police, bachelorette parties. No one wants bands, weddings. I'd say, having lived on Barry Street, that weddings might be the noisiest of all. But that's not what these applicants are asking for. Every time you've heard delicate balance, precedent, slippery slope, or any of those words, that's a presumption being made that one, these applicants are going to sell their property or that they're lying, or two, that they're going to bring a short-term rental use into that property. That is not what they're asking for. And if we can believe each other as neighbors, we understand the need to draw a line somewhere. But what we want to show is that you can have neighbors, and upzoning does not automatically equal short-term rentals. I agree that short-term rentals bring all of these harms, but none of these applications. And what I said to these applicants, knowing my reputation as a former attorney that served right after Bill Regan, looked at BAR and looked at several other zoning things, is look, if this is a backdoor way to try to get a short-term rental, I can't represent you, because I live with everyone. I've been on boards with several people on this board. They know, and they have some belief in me when I say, you're going to follow through with what you say. And because of that, the building that's now on Cannon Street is not the YMCA anymore, and there's a YMCA somewhere else where there's growth. and that building can be used as something else. So I understand the groupthink. I understand that the same letters can be read for anybody that ever goes for an upzoning. And if that's the case, then no one ever deserves an upzoning. Because if you buy a property as one thing and your neighbors are gonna oppose you when you wanna change it because your needs change, and you say, I'll be a good neighbor, no one will ever get an upzoning. And Mayor Riley and Mayor Tecklenburg, I'm sure, would also say that the city's not against upzonings, or else the law would not allow it. You all are making a recommendation to City Council, and if we cannot find a use that does not bring gunshots, crime, parties, public toilets, I don't think any of these applicants want their properties to be used as such. And so it's a certain amount of belief that at what point do we get beyond saying it's a slippery slope, it's a precedent, it's a delicate balance. If that's the case, then the neighborhood will never change. It will stay exactly like it is, because every change is going to bring the fear of short-term rentals. And what I'd submit to you as someone who's been doing this almost as long as Bob Holt, but I look at it from the legal side, he looks at it from the real estate side, is that if you have a plan, and I think that's what Mayor Riley went against every time he wanted to change King Street into Charleston Place, or Upper King Street into a place where it's no longer you would get shot, or above Calhoun, is if you can get a mix of commercial and residents, yeah, there'll be some fits and starts, but if the neighbors are truly being neighbors, not people who just buy properties for profit, no one likes that. Absentee owners are what leads to 16 people bachelorette parties. These neighbors are not proposing that and would never do that, and I would not represent them if they did. And so when you make this vote, again, I know you're not getting paid for it. Many of you all don't know me at all, some of you do. But when I take an application like this, it's only because I believe not only in what the application is putting forth, but the things I used to write about in the city paper almost every other week. We need to stop gentrification. So I hear and feel what all African Americans who said they're African American in their opposition letters, that's the side I fight on. And I also fight for the side of people like the Dewberry or Sergeant Jasper, if they follow the rules, to be permitted a business use that does not disturb the neighbors. And that's what I've advocated for the last 20 to 30 years. So what I would say is, yes, if you look at this as one of a herd of people wanting upzoning, then yeah, you just deny every single one, and that's the easiest way to go forward. I was on the parole board for several years. If you always vote no, you never have to worry about someone going out and doing another crime. But the fear that I've heard for every single person that said precedent, slippery slope, delicate balance, or STR in their opposition letter is, yeah, we trust these neighbors, we're okay with what they want, but we don't know if they sell it, what the next person's gonna do. And what I'd submit to you, and the last thing I'd say is, as a city attorney, former city attorney, if every application that ever asked for a zoning change or a variance or any kind of change was said, you know, we believe you, but we're worried about when you sell it, whenever you sell it, we don't know what the next person's gonna do. That would be a winning argument every time if property owners were liable for what the next buyer might do. These applicants have told me we are not gonna do short-term rentals and we have no plans on selling whatever our plans were in the past, and that's the condition on which I represented them. So I ask you, for those who know me, to please think about the long term. And the long term is, this corridor is very different than it was 15 years ago, back when I was on the Cannon Street Y board. And it's gonna be very different 15 years from now, when some of these same owners will probably still own the property. And if they've been good neighbors that have not allowed the parties and the police and the shootings, I mean, we have people from Mount Pleasant writing against this application. These people are your neighbors, and they just want the same opportunity to enjoy their property as you have, and they do not want the horrors to occur that I agree should not be in any neighborhood. So, Mr. Koresh, I think I know I've met you before. Maybe it was dealing with pets and animals instead of houses, but my passion for being on the right side of community development runs very deep. And that's the only reason I'm even appearing on this request, is because I believe in my clients, and I think you all should believe in them too. So thank you very much. And again, I respect and appreciate all the letters of opposition. And if we work together, we can make sure that the scourge of short-term rentals that don't follow the rules doesn't make it impossible for those that do follow the rules to get the most value out of their property. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Are you speaking for, I just want to make sure we don't cut anybody out. Are you speaking for all, in the rebuttal or the answers, are you speaking for all the applicants?
All the applicants, and I'm asking, my request would be that, again, these neighbors, I heard the word saying they're coordinating. Well, these are just neighbors that support each other. They're in a like circumstance. And I think those who own short-term rentals will say, hey, we did it the right way. They support, we all should support one another. So I'm speaking for all four, and I'm asking humbly that they all be approved together, and that they be given a chance that their applications are true on their face, and they do not want to be the yards that have gunshots, noise parties, public toilets, bachelorette parties. No one wants that. And I want them to have the opportunity to work with the neighborhood to show that they're not going to be those kind of neighbors, and that they are not going to bring short-term rentals in to upset the balance. And thank you for that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Green. That's going to close the public aspect of this. These items on the agenda, which are items 2, 3, 4, and 5 under rezonings. Is any questions, comments, motions of commission members?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Jacobs has her hand raised.
Ms. Jacobs, you go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions before I consider any kind of motion. I know that we did take a vote on 217 Ashley Avenue in my first year as a planning commission, and it moved on to city council. Do we have any record that city council took any action during that time?
Mr. Morgan, can you give us any information on that?
Yes. So city council ended up not taking any action because the applicant kept deferring the item before them. And it was ultimately withdrawn by rule because over 365 days on a council agenda without action means it is, effectively not able to be considered again. And that came as of December 1st of 2019.
Thank you.
It was heard by you all. It was heard at Planning Commission. It appeared on 11/15/2017 PC agenda, then was deferred by the applicant. Then it was heard by the PC on the May 16th, 2018. It was deferred by PC to allow applicant to work on restrictions and covenants. Then it was heard by PC on June 20th of 2018 and deferred by the applicant during the meeting. And then it was heard by PC on 10/17/2018 and recommended for disapproval by the PC.
Thank you. I have two more questions. When we show these pink regions on Cannon Street, essentially across the street and adjacent, is there any indication of how many of those limited businesses zonings are actually STRs? Is there a number that's easily stated?
We don't have that. I mean, you could probably research it and look for the legal ones, but I don't have that at present. And
Okay.
we'd have to talk to our zoning staff that handles the STRs.
Okay. And then it's my understanding of the reading of the short-term overlay zoning that only certain commercial zonings actually have the potential to go to STRs. So with that said, if these residents are very sincere in their soft uses of these properties, why wasn't a residential office zoning considered? Because I think that would allow these commercial uses that they're seeking, one, but that doesn't allow the upzoning into that STR next jump, if I'm correct on that. Was there any consideration for that or discussion on that point?
Are you
Mr. Morgan?
I'm asking you.
I'm not aware.
Mr. Morgan.
All I know is that we were given these applications for limited business, so I don't know that question is going to be applicable.
Okay. So there was. So you're not aware of any.
Yeah, Ms. Jacobs, I believe Mr. Morgan had said something about possibly they could look at that again. I think, Chris, didn't we discuss that at one time, or
Well, I
some
mean,
kind of overlay for,
if the commission wanted to recommend a different zoning, or if the applicants wanted to amend their applications for a less intense zoning, you all could certainly look at that and you could consider it tonight. They can't go more intense, but they could ask for less intense. And it is true that residential office or office general, those two office categories are not they do not allow rentals. There are parking requirements that go with them. There may be some limitations on how that works. It may end up being that, as I heard the neighborhood discuss a good bit, that a use variance works better for an office use, something like that. But it definitely sounds like there are opportunities if the applicants are just interested in office uses with some limited limitations on that sounded like the neighborhood was supportive.
thank you, Mr. Morgan. Ms. Jacobs, anything else?
Well, I would like to compliment everybody on the presentation. This is a very difficult subject. I'm very impressed with the neighborhood, their savvy understanding of their neighborhood, their desire to keep it a delicate neighborhood. That's a very important part for a planning commissioner. That's actually stated that we should consider this as part of any zoning request or a rezoning request. So I really compliment these neighbors to come and take their time and speak in such an intelligent, savvy way on their neighborhood. It's really a nice thing to hear. I'm going to be so bold to make a motion right now that we accept staff's recommendation for disapproval for all of these residences based on what we just heard from staff.
So Ms. Jacobs, your motion is to deny rezoning number 2, 123 Cannon, rezoning number 3, 121 Cannon, rezoning number 4, 217 Ashley, and number 5, 125 Cannon. Is that your motion? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but is that what your motion is?
That's correct. And if they would like to consider these lesser commercial zonings, then we could have a conversation about that tonight. But that's my first recommendation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. There's a motion of denial. Any other comments, questions, or of commission members?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
This is
Go ahead,
Harold.
Mr. Lassane. Go ahead.
I would like to second Ms. Jacobs' motion and very briefly just make a comment. First of all, I think I'm speaking for myself on this, but I think the rest of our commission would probably agree with me, and that is that this is not personal. This is not, these issues we're making policy decisions, not personal decisions about whether we like somebody or whether they're nice or whether they're not nice. The applicants here are represented by able counsel who I've worked with for many years and have great respect for. So this is not about whether or not we like somebody or not. So let's put that aside. Or whether we believe what they say. Whether an applicant says, well, I'm not going to do this with it, or I'm not going to do that with it. I mean, that's useful information, but for me, it's not determinative, because what we're talking about here is the use. No property owner can say that they will never sell a property. It's very unlikely that a property would never be sold. And the zoning runs with the land, and it's not related to the particular owner. If that's the desire, that the owner only wants the use to go with their ownership, then really a use variance is the way to go, because it would end with their use. For me, all the reasons that Ms. Jacobs mentioned is why I second her motion. We've seen, for example, the Ashley Avenue property a number of times. My position hasn't changed on that. And, the city passed the short-term rental ordinance which included the overlay district for Elliottboro, Cannonboro. And we spent a lot of time on that. We spent a lot of time on that, and that ordinance granted certain rights to certain people, and depending on what neighborhood they lived in, and it took some rights away from people depending on what neighborhood they lived in. And you know, that's the nature of zoning, and that's what we're doing here. Is we're saying, you know, we're going to stick with the zoning that is on the property. That is my recommendation anyway. And I don't think that's an unfair thing to do, because I think that's the policy that we've applied. You know, the comment was made that if we do something here different than we've done before, then we're going to have a line of people to rezone their properties in Elliottboro, Cannonboro. Well, I got a news flash, and that is that we already have that line. I mean, we deal with this on a regular basis. Just about every meeting there's one of these, and it's the same arguments typically that are presented by the applicants, and for myself, I come back to the same reasons for voting to deny the rezonings. And then I'll close my comments by saying, again, this is not personal. I believe that each one of these applicants has a pure motive, and I don't question their motives. And as I said, Mr. Green, I greatly respect. So those are the reasons for me to support and second Ms. Jacobs' motion. Thanks.
Thank you. Well said, Mr. Hussain. Other comments from commission members or questions? If not,
Ms. Harrison has her hand raised.
Who does it? Ms. Harrison? Go ahead.
Don, you mentioned the RO zoning, and I understand. So let me I think it's important to give a little bit more backdrop on this STR overlay. Harry, I agree with you. Dwayne is a phenomenal person. We all have had some form of working relationship with Dwayne, in the past, but I feel like I've been practicing law for about 15, 16 years. So, my intro to all of this stuff is vis-a-vis Dwayne. So Dwayne, yes, I think we all know that you've got your integrity is intact. This STR overlay and it started, I think, well into 2012. And then there was the commission to revisit this idea. And at one point in time, the STR overlay was going to see a sunset. And the neighborhood association itself, and along with other people, advocated to remain intact the idea that properties that are commercially zoned, that were commercially zoned at the time, that it should not dissipate. And so you have the current STR ordinance that you have now. What we don't have is the opportunity for properties that are similarly situated that want to be able to have a commercial use, which is what Ms. Jacobs suggested, which was the RO's designation. There isn't an opportunity for that. And I think we, in an activist way of a commission, we need to go back to planning and say, look, this is something that is viable. The opportunity is there for properties that are similarly situated, that may be zoned residential, that may sit on a commercial corridor, but instinctively, it is true, the zoning goes with the land. There's nothing that precludes the ability for a property that is rezoned to be used as an STR. And the only way we can rectify that is by creating another base zoning opportunity that allows for a property to be zoned commercial, but excludes the opportunity to have an STR. And I think that is something we should, number one, we can do a couple of things. And I understand that there's a motion on the table that we rezone these parcels as RO, or deny them in total. Or the other thing is that we say, look, we should defer this and allow them to come and allow planning to create its own new-based zoning district that addresses this specific issue. We're going to constantly see this. It's a constant. I mean, I'll use even my own example of a property that I rezoned, and I have a partial rezoning only to fit the size of the building, the sweet shop that exists on it. And it is a slippery slope, because what prevents, another owner to say, wait a second, they were originally zoned DR2F, they couldn't get it, and now the whole parcel, we've seen this, earlier this year. We've seen it actually twice on the same parcel this year. So the question is going to keep coming up. If you want a commercial zoning along this avenue, what do? We don't have something that creates that exception. And I wonder if it's now time for us to say we need to do that as a part of, this process of even our own comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. Well, good thoughts. I think that staff should look at this and address some of the questions you had and that have been brought up about people that want to have businesses in their home there. I do think, I'm going to echo, I think the LB is a little bit just too broad for me in this area for that. And I respect Mr. Green and what he has to say about what he feels the client's intents are, and I respect that and I believe him. But I do think it's just too broad to change it to the LB zoning, which would allow this. Other comments or questions of commission members? If not, we have
Mr. Bailey has his hand raised.
Go ahead, Mr. Bailey.
I really just wanted to, other than about 10 seconds when her audio cut out for me, I wanted to agree with everything that Ms. Harrison said. When I look at this base zoning map, that sure looks like a commercial corridor to me, but I understand the short-term rental issue. And it seems like maybe we've got a short-term rental issue more than we have a zoning issue. And so, if we were considering a different question, I'd be inclined to support some way to make this happen. I almost feel like this is one of those situations that ought to go to some sort of mediation and try to work it out. And so I think Ms. Harrison makes a very good point that this is something we need to try to figure out if we can. And I don't know that can happen tonight. I'd love to see it deferred, but I know there's a motion on the table.
Yes, sir. And there is a motion on the table. I agree with you. And I think that Mr. Morgan and staff hears us from Mr. Bailey and Ms. Harrison and Ms. Hossain and Ms. Jacobs that we'd like to look at this area. I know they've looked at it many times, but look at this area again and some of the issues that are coming up and try to address some of these so that it doesn't keep coming up with problems, that we try to come up with some solutions. So I think y'all are all correct. Any other comments or questions, commission members? If not, we do have a motion on the floor by Ms. Jacobs, seconded by Mr. Hossain.
Mr. Hossain has his hand raised, Charlie.
Go ahead, Mr. Hossain, you go ahead.
Well, actually, I think Mr. Flug hasn't spoken and he has his hand up as well, so I'll defer to him.
All right, Mr. Flug, you go ahead.
Thank you, Harry. Just for the record, I'd just like to say that I'm in agreement with the comments of Ms. Harrison and Mr. Bailey. I think there's a short-term rental issue here, and I hope there's a way where we can all come together to make this work, particularly for these 4 applicants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flug. Mr. Hossain, did you have something else?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is, for me, this is less a short-term rental issue than it is a residential to commercial transition. So I don't want to give the sense that we're all in favor of this, but for the STR issue, because once these things go commercial, they will not ever go back, or it would be rare for them to go back to residential. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there too.
Okay. Thank you, all of y'all. Any other comments? Go ahead, Ms. Jacobs, you said something? Yes,
I want to thank everybody for the discussion, because that was what I was hoping it would lead into, but I would only caution a deferral, because if we don't make a judgment one way or another tonight, then we bless the application as it's stated. So we can't defer tonight. We can either resolve the issue or vote to support staff and come back to it with a better recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. And again, there's no motion to defer on the floor, and actually, I think Mr. McCann, our past chairman, used to say to kick the can. I think we need to deal with this as we do tonight, and then ask staff to help us come up with some solutions for this area as voiced by Ms. Harrison and Mr. Flug and some of the other commission members. So any other comments, questions, commission members? If not, there's a motion to deny by Ms. Jacobs and seconded by
Ms.
Ms.
Harrison has her
Hossain.
hand raised. Charlie.
Her hand up.
Ms. Harrison?
I have one question. Yeah. So based on your motion is a denial, but it doesn't. If the applicant wanted to do RO and they wanted to address that now, would you be open to hearing that? Because they may say, no, I don't want to do it, but I want to hear them say they don't. Would you want to know if that was something that they wanted to come back with, or you want to say?
Well, I think we run a slippery slope of talking about what an applicant wants to do. Ms. Jacobs, you want to answer that?
If the commission is willing to listen to that for all the applicants, and each one may have a different sort of idea about that, or they may want time to think about it. But it's my understanding of the ordinance, which I have sitting behind my Zoom screen, that residential office zoning does not allow for an STR application. And if that's correct, and people want to consider that, but we would have 4 different individuals in consideration, that might be complicated for this evening.
Yeah, and that's why my concern is I think that staff needs to look at this. I agree with Ms. Harrison, but I know to resolve this with all 4 parcels and 4 items on the agenda would be difficult. So anyway, as it stands now, we do have a motion to deny. We do have a second to deny.
Ms. Lemphasis,
Ms. Lemphasis has her.
Ms. Lemphasis, you go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I think that we're going down a slippery slope if we address the residential office tonight. I think that that needs to be something that, like you said, that needs to be looked at by staff. I definitely agree 100% with all the comments that have been made this evening. This is an important zoning decision that we make that's going to impact us for a long time. And I really believe that we need to deny it tonight and then come back and individually and not us represent what these people want. I think that's going to take, I think we can't make that happen tonight. They're not even available. We're not even in a meeting where we can even talk to people. So I think that we just need to move forward with the motion. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Ms. Lemphasis. I agree with you. Any other comments, questions? If not, there's a motion.
Ms. Johnson has her hand raised.
Ms. Johnson, you've been pretty quiet tonight. You go ahead. Ms. Johnson, you there?
Angie, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to say that I agree with what Sunday had to say and with the previous comments. I think there's a lot of merit to the discussion that we're having, but I don't think that it's wise for us to propose a change this late in the game. I think we need to vote on the motion that's on the floor, and then we can discuss those other options at a later date. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Any other comments, questions of commission members? If not, there is a motion. There's a second to deny items on the rezonings. Number 2, 123 Cannon. Number 3, 121 Cannon. Number 4, 217 Ashley. And number 5, 125 Cannon. I'm going to call the roll. We'll take a vote. Again, everybody knows we're voting on those 4 items. Mr. Bailey?
We're voting on the motion to deny, right?
Yes,
or
sir.
to accept the staff recommendation.
Yes, sir. The motion was to accept the staff recommendation to deny the applications.
Okay, I'll vote. Aye in
Say it
favor.
again. Aye in favor. All right. Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Ms. Harrison?
I in favor.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Jacobs?
I in favor.
Ms. Johnson? Ms. Johnson?
I in.
Maybe muted. Great, thank you, ma'am. Ms. Lampasas?
I in favor.
Mr. Losane?
I in favor.
Mr. Flug?
I in favor.
Great, and I'm in favor as well, so that is 8 in favor of Ms. Jacobs's another motion to deny those 4 items. Thank you all. The next item, that finishes rezonings, and now we have because number 6 was deferred. So now we have Mr. Morgan zonings. We have 3 zonings. Can we take any of those together?
Charlie, Ms. Limpis has her hand raised. No.
Ms. Lampasas, go ahead.
Charlie, I'm at my office and I'm going to leave my office now. I'm going to come back in my car on my phone, but I will not be on it. So I will be able to vote, but I just wanted you to know that I was leaving the Zoom meeting.
We'll miss you. We will miss seeing you, Ms. Lampasas.
I'll be listening. Thank you, guys. Have a nice night.
Thanks. Mr. Morgan, can we take any of these zonings? Are they all separate? Should it be taken up separately?
We've got them on separate slides here, but we
Okay. Whatever you recommend.
They are all SR1, so I can publish them for you if you like, and then you can vote them all together. So we have 1858 Christian Road, West Ashley, and this was R4 in Charleston County and would come into the city as SR1. We have 1824 Sandcroft Drive in West Ashley. It was R4 in Charleston County and would come in the city as SR1. And then we have Wapu Road in West Ashley. It was R4 in Charleston County and would come in the city of Charleston as SR1.
And Ms., I don't think anyone had signed up or had written comments to speak on any of these. Is that right, Ms. Stuber?
That's correct.
Mr. Bailey.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Mr. Bailey, you go ahead.
I have a motion, but I'll defer to any questions or comments.
Okay, why don't you go ahead, unless somebody has a comment or question, you go ahead, Mr. Bailey.
I move that we approve the staff recommendations on all 3 of these.
Great. So Mr. Bailey moves that zoning number 1, 1858 Christian, number 2, 1824 Sancroft, number 3, Wapu Road, all be approved as recommended by staff. Is there any other questions, comments, or is there a second to the motion?
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Losane. Mr. Losane seconds. Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll go ahead and call the roll. Mr. Bailey?
I in favor.
Great. Ms. Harrison?
I in favor.
Great. Ms. Jacobs?
I in favor.
Great. Ms. Johnson? Ms. Johnson, you with us?
She's muted.
Okay. Ms. Johnson, I think you may be muted. Let's go to Mr. Losane. Do you want to vote?
I in favor.
Mr. Flug?
I in favor.
Ms. Lampasas, are you with us on the phone? I know you left, but I don't know if you will be on the phone or not. If not, Ms. Johnson, are you with us now?
Her video is off, so she may not be at her
Okay,
chair.
she might have signed off. Well, I'm in favor as well, so that would make it 6 to nothing in favor. Mr. Morgan, Chloe, is there anything else we need to cover tonight? You want to remind everybody about the future meetings? I think we did that earlier, but.
Yes, we have the meeting. It's at 3 o'clock on Monday, November 2nd. And we will be hearing from the consultant teams on aspects of the comprehensive plan.
Great. Thank you all. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. I love that motion. Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate everybody's work. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.